Owning a home can seem like a complicated game of obligations. Taxes, utilities, a mortgage, all need to be paid on time. If not, liens are placed on the property.
48, 49.
Georgia is seeing a surge of investors.
2,000 going twice, sold, minimum bid.
Snatching up tax liens on homes and combining them with a second lien from an unpaid medical bill or utility to legally swipe a property in a matter of days.
We didn't have time to do anything.
That game is Jessica Davis Sims' reality.
It's like waking up from a really bad nightmare and realizing that it's true. You've lost your family's inheritance.
Her grandparents built and paid off this Canton home decades ago. After they died, Sims, her brother, and her uncle became the owners. But her uncle, who lives here, got behind $14,000 on property taxes. When Sims found out, it was too late.
We had 2 days, and it was being auctioned off on the courthouse steps.
Records show a company bought their tax deed for $130,000 in early June 2014. The law gives homeowners 12 months to recover, but there was a problem. Her uncle had a medical lien. Another company, Trintech, bought it and the deed from the first company, creating a super lien and bypassing the waiting period. Trintech asked a judge to let them foreclose less than a month later.
Officers on the scene were clearly skeptical. In fact, a deputy filed 2 different crash diagrams. One showing only the Nissan, with its driver the suspect at fault, and a second depicting a hit and run by a phantom vehicle that no one has seen since. Allstate latched onto that one and denies all liability.
The state's going to have to make it harder for people to qualify for them. There's no question about that.
If you don't have trees, you have to be able to make $2,500 a year farming. That could mean rescuing horses like Tama or selling produce from your yard. We went undercover to check out how the card works. The state lists what's allowed to be tax-free, but most stores didn't even look. We bought home improvement items, a charcoal grill, even the kitchen sink. The receipts rang up 0 sales tax, even for things prohibited.
Most of their pools are warm weather only. They've been open only 300 days since the government started requiring pool lifts. Each of Hagler's suits says he personally visited. That means Hagler would have had to visit a motel about every 3 days. On the farm, Roundup makes its biggest impact. According to a recent study, giant sprayers like this have applied 370,000 tons of the active ingredient glyphosate in the United States, most of it in the past 10 years. It coats the Midwest and a swath of Georgia's Farm Belt. Nick McMicken is using it on a North Georgia cotton field.
Pickups are done by private contractors. Some charge for recycling, others do not, but the records aren't public. What we know is what Cobb pays to administer its recycling program. In 2014, $440,000. That dropped to just $45,000 last year. Will it ever be a moneymaker or break even?
The recall system is broken.
Atlanta attorney Matt Wetherington says in the last decade, 4.5 million tires were recalled, but fewer than 1 million were recovered. Where are the rest?
It's right there on Peachtree, a fine example of buckhead prosperity. Asking prices at the Phoenix range from $400,000 to well over $1 million. And for years, there was an unwritten amenity. The city was charging little or nothing for water and sewer.
It's shocking to me. If everyone knew this story, it would cause outrage to everyone.
Investment analyst Jack Richardson moved into the Phoenix right after it opened in 2001. He became aware of the billing problem when he read this in an HOA audit. As of December 31, 2003, the association had not received a bill for a meter that services common areas. This has been a problem from the beginning. Richardson says the HOA said it would pay it.
You had no reason to believe that it was...
That's right. We believe what the board told us.
Richardson says he became suspicious when he had trouble getting HOA financial records in later years. Eventually, he became convinced the bills were not being paid and residents were being duped.
They've actively sought to cover this up from the residents of the building, and they got caught.
Early last year, 11 years after that audit revealed the billing problem, other residents began asking questions. One emailed fellow residents, "It's very unfortunate that the board made the extremely questionable decision more than a decade ago not to discover why the association was being grossly underbilled. Surely the directors did not believe the free services would last forever." Another resident reported that board member Errol Davis, the former Atlanta school superintendent, had said the board did not feel that there was an ethical or legal obligation to attempt to pay unless the city sent a bill.
How much do you owe?
Well, I believe over 15 years, we owe approximately $1 million without penalties and interest, just on the pure bill alone.
It's a significant amount of money.
Atlanta Watershed spokeswoman Lillian Govis provided records back to 2002. They show the Phoenix paid some water bills, which were generally about 95% too low. There were no sewage bills. Phoenix finally came to the city last fall. The city found meter and billing problems that stretch back apparently to the opening of the Phoenix. So will anyone pay for all those unbilled services?
Obstruction of a law enforcement officer, disorderly conduct.
Thousands of newly arrested defendants pass through the jail every year. Many face lesser, nonviolent crimes, but not all of them.
Reckless conduct, maybe aggravated assault.
We reviewed a year of cases processed through the Fulton County Jail, more than 26,000 suspects. At least 250 were released by signing their own bonds, despite being accused of felony charges involving violence.
Someone has called it fantasy bond.
Former State Representative Lynn Walker pushed through legislation in 2010 intended to make it much more difficult to let defendants sign their own bonds in cases involving violent charges. He calls the results disappointing.
I believe that the procedure that is in place in Fulton County puts people at great risk.
These are some of the cases we uncovered. Defendants accused of aggravated assault, armed robbery, aggravated stalking, aggravated battery, terroristic threats and acts, even an alleged rape and a case of alleged child molestation. Some were released after background investigations by the court's pretrial services program, others released straight from the jail. All got out on their own signatures. There's evidence the DA's office doesn't like it. James Simmons was allowed to sign his own bond after being arrested for aggravated assault on a girlfriend. The assistant DA signed the bond document observed, not consented.
One word, the difference between killing yourself and your unborn baby or your husband getting away with murder. Between a thorough investigation and the freedom to kill again. One word redefines a family fighting for 24 years.
It doesn't say that my daughter killed herself and killed her son. It doesn't say that anymore. Thank God for that.
Bobby Mosley never doubted this day would come. When Julie Lynn was found shot in the forehead in 1990, Bobby immediately thought Julie's husband Jim pulled the trigger. Jim admits his high school sweetheart asked for a divorce that night. He told the sheriff he just said okay and left. But investigators never checked out holes in his timeline and ruled Julie's death a suicide just 2 days later.
I know he did it. I know he did it. And I want justice for my daughter and for my grandbaby.
Julie had spent the day painting her house, doing laundry, and reading a baby book. The young newlywed was 5 months pregnant and planning for the future.
These are all big-time red flags.
We asked retired GBI agent Ralph Stone to review the entire case, investigated by one of his colleagues.
They just didn't do a complete investigation. I'm embarrassed, to be quite honest with you. In 1990, we weren't dinosaurs.
He says the agent should have questioned how Julie's hand fell neatly into a narrow crack between the bed and the wall, with the gun below her left hand, though she was right-handed. There was no gunshot residue, and women almost never shoot themselves in the face.
The number one person that should have been suspected in this matter was the husband.
Then in 2011, Jim Lynn did become a suspect, but not in Julie's death.
Investigators are trying to find answers about what happened to a missing mother. 38-year-old Tanya Lynn of Winder didn't...
Tanya was Jim's third wife. He eventually led investigators to her body. But before she died, Tanya documented years of abuse and wrote,
"He also told me if I wanted to kill myself,
he would show me how to use the gun.
A chilling threat, since an old report confirms Tanya was terrified. She'd recently found out Jim was questioned in the killing of his wife decades earlier.
They made determinations solely on what they saw at that time. I'm looking at it from a different perspective altogether.
We showed the Candler County District Attorney our review of Julie's case.
We are going to do a further investigation, no question about that.
He sent the coroner this letter declaring her death suspicious and ordering the death certificate changed, but that doesn't necessarily mean charges.
I'll make that decision solely on whether or not I can actually prove the case.
Jim is already serving life in prison for Tanya's murder. When his last appeal is done, Bobby hopes to hear one more word.
If you ever cared anything about Julie, please tell the truth.